Welcome to Big Hearted Indie, where we empower men in Indianapolis to forge deep connections and impactful lives through authentic friendships and service. Join us as we explore personal growth, community leadership, and the transformative power of living out our faith in action. The podcast is produced by Citizen 7, and it is hosted by Greg Enos, Don Palmer, and I'm Chris Spangle. And our guests today are Isaac Bamgbose, all right, and Fred Yeakey. Let's actually start with Greg giving us kind of the introduction to Isaac and Fred. You know, tell us about this conversation and why we want to talk to them, and what is it about their friendship that will bless the audience today.
Thanks, Chris, and really great to have Isaac and Fred here today. Don and I have known you guys for a few years, and we love you, and just excited to share your individual and joint visions and stories for the city as we all seek to follow the way of Jesus into this beautiful city that he loves and that we love. Don and I are pleased to be with you all today. Out of our friendship, Citizen 7 is seeking to connect guys with each other and then into their calling, whatever God has called them into the city. And in particular, Isaac and Fred, from various backgrounds, and you'll hear more of their story today, all have endeavored to actually create the built environment in our city. Fred, as you'll hear from his new multifamily vision in under-resourced neighborhoods to create a footprint that brings healing and wholeness to individuals and families as they dwell. And Isaac, with his background and experience in the built environment, creating both commercial and other kinds of development that will lead to human flourishing in not only our city, but outside as well. So it's a thrill to have these two guys who know each other as friends. They share a common vision from diverse backgrounds, but Don and I have really gotten to know and love these guys. And so I don't want to do any more talking, but turn it back to you, Chris, so you can begin.
Yeah, Fred, Isaac, tell us how your friendship developed, actually. Let's start there.
It's a great question, and I want to thank you guys for allowing myself and Isaac to be on this wonderful platform to share a lot of great things. I think our connection started with a common thread by a person by the name of David Neff. Dave Neff and I got connected because of Indianapolis Business Journal did an article, and he reached out on LinkedIn and invited me to an opportunity to come to Edge conference, and I brought some students, and it was intentional collision, and he was telling me about a few things, and I happened to meet this young, athletic Michael Jordan figure by the name of Isaac, and deeply impressed by him. His story quickly resonated with me, and someone that I really admired in that space. And that's been about maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5 years ago, and just been able to connect with him.
It was back when I didn't have gray hair.
That's a long, long time ago. 5 years ago. That feels like 15 years at this point. I mean, that's great. So, Isaac, what's your version of the connection point, and what attracted both of you to each other in terms of friendship?
Yeah. No, I echo everything.
Hold that
Fred.
up just for me.
Oh, this is better?
Yep, perfect. Edit.
I echo everything Fred just mentioned in terms of, it's an honor to be here with these fine young gentlemen.
Thank you.
Very relative term.
That's right.
I paid Isaac.
A theory. Don says it's a relative term.
That's right. That's right. So, no, really honored to be here with all of you. And as Fred mentioned, in terms of our good, super connector, David Neff, that was really the sparking point. And, as Fred even mentioned, there was just this sort of, there's a vibe, there's an energy you feel when you're around certain people in terms of what they're going for and the purpose that they have on their lives. And, you want to surround yourself with those types of people. And Fred is one of those people that I think a lot of folks, are clamoring day in and day out to be a part of what he's doing and the life he's bringing into the city. And so you know, how could I not want to be in his sphere and circle? So it just kind of one thing led to another. Obviously got looped in with what he's doing over at Providence, Cristo, and you know the rest has kind of been history. So yeah,
We need to have Dave on the show because I've gotten clients off of Dave. We've never even had lunch. Like this guy,
Yeah.
he's just an all-star.
He's smooth, man. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think his name has come up every podcast, and everybody you meet, it says a Dave Neff connection. And
Yeah.
he's just talk a little bit about Dave. I mean, just here, let's take a couple minutes to appreciate somebody who does so much to connect people and build relationships in the city.
I guess I'll go first. I think Dave is a young man that is interested in being the fabric of a lot of individuals by just connectivity. I think he recently made a LinkedIn post today honoring one of his mentors, which was Jim Morris, and how Jim Morris really changed his paradigm about just meeting new relationships just because it's the right thing to do and having genuine interest. And I think Dave takes that model in a generation that sometimes is very fast, and he slows down and sees the angles and how things can interconnect. And he's not afraid to say, hey, man, too many of my friends are white, right? And I think he sees the uniqueness and the gift that God has made with humanity, and he wants to surround himself with that to grow himself and his family. I think that's what makes having relationships like that with Dave great. I want to bring in my spear, and he wants to bring his spears because the common goal is just interconnectivity.
Go ahead, Isaac.
you know, a different way but similar, you know, way of saying that is I feel Dave is modern day Jim Morris.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that post that Freddie alluded to, he talks about impact and being able to, you know, improve every day and, you know, spend 20% of your time, you know, connecting with people in your community and outside of your community and things of that nature. And so I think he really embodies that. And again, it was great to see the honor that he gave to Jim via that post. And I was just with him last week. And we were talking about some of that too. And again, the spirit that he embodies of just impact and being able to kind of stay in that lane and use his gifts and talents. He's very intentional with that, especially as a guy with, you know, 4 kids.
I know.
So,
Yeah.
2 and I'm
Like
exhausted.
this guy.
Yeah. You have 4 kids?
4 kids, let's go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Need a nap?
Yeah, I drive a minivan. I'm proud of it. The Odyssey 2011. But no, man, it's great because, you know, like today, you know, being a parent is clearly one of the best things that God has could have ever allowed me to be. And today, I had one of those surreal moments that, you know, in the summer, you always want to keep your kids busy. And my wife, who just had my 4th child, Christopher Anthony, she's been at home nursing him. So it's been like daddy, like 1 on 3.
Because he's like, what, a month old?
Yeah, he is. And so I just really been tied in, but there were all these clubs and activities they're involved in. And I didn't know that my youngest daughter, Chelsea Yeakey, was working on writing a book.
Wow.
And we just got it published on Amazon. So I'm like, wow, you know.
Okay.
So
What's the title of it?
that's a good question.
That's not the title.
All right, yeah. We'll put it in the show notes. but-
Rosie is the title, about Rosie exercise with her friends. And I'm like, wow, she's 8 years old. She drew it and she created it. And I was like, wow, like I want to learn from that, you know, how to have joy and excitement just to write something that you just want to do. I'm like, and you publish it at 8 years old. I'm like, sheesh, you know what I mean? So being a dad is just so awesome when you can see the small things in that. And it kind of encourages you to keep doing what I think Isaac does well, Don, Greg, all of us, is that doing things like this community.
Yeah. Everybody go check out Rosie. We'll put it in the show notes, but buy a copy, please. Help
Make it a bestseller.
Yeah, make her day. Make her day.
Let's go, Chelsea.
Let's talk a little bit about your backgrounds. Let's start with you, Fred. Sure. Tell us, you know, what inspired you to give back to your community? Where did that impulse begin in your journey?
Yeah. I am a proud native son of Indianapolis, Indiana. I was blessed to grow up Lawrence Township, but I went to IPS, so School 92, John Marshall, Arlington. Youngest of 6 kids. My mom and dad are still married, so I think my heart of service started as a young child. I grew up in church, and always felt compelled by God and the scriptures, and had to be in when the street lights came on. So all my friends can do that, but I always had these parameters. So being raised with the level of discipline of what you can and can't do, it really kind of gives you a unique ability to take a step back and look. So I think my parents did a great job of raising me up in the way I should go, as that scripture says. So when I went up and then when I went off to school, there was only so far I could really go because I always had that fear. And I started to look at my life. It's like, like, what am I on earth to do? So in college, I had a very unique experience where I was like, I can go down this path and make a lot of money, or I can do this and feel like, this is really what I can do to give back. And this is what I'm called to do. And I made the switch from doing engineering to public administration. And that kind of led me down this path that I never would have thought, from doing nonprofit work, federal government work, and education. So that give back kind of started at a young age at a vacation Bible school, and just kind of seeing my parents do things, and it's addictive. I tell every youth that I talk to, if you love to receive, you will love giving way more, because it literally opens up some things in your thoughts in your mind are like, man, I put a smile on someone's face, and it didn't mean anything to me, but because I gave it away for free without wanting anything back, it just resonates. And I saw that I can impact more people's lives the right way by being in a heart in a place of serving.
And now you're at Providence Cristo Ray High School. You're
Yeah.
the chief partnerships officer.
Yeah.
Correct. I don't know why that's hard for my fat Hoosier tongue to say, but tell us what a chief's partnership officer does. Tell us a little bit about the high school and your work there.
Absolutely. So Providence Cristo Ray is a national private high school. It's about 40 schools around the country. Started in Chicago by a Jesuit priest. And the mission of the school is simply to educate families who can't afford private school experience. So if you can afford the tuition, we don't accept you. We only high school only. We've been in Indianapolis since 2007. And this school is designed to eradicate poverty and to destroy the ills that cause those populations to serve. So my role there, Cristo Ray, and how Cristo Ray works is that in order to come there, every student has to have a job. In corporate America, they work 1 day a week, and that pays off their tuition, gives them the opportunity to experience different relationships, and then it also gets them on a path and a trajectory that they can work and earn, and as well break those cycles. And I appreciate Cristo Ray because we do it with Christ, right? We just don't leave God out. You have to have that part of relationship with it. So my role as chief partnership officer is essentially to make sure every student has a job. So my job is to help grow those jobs, make sure every job understands our mission, every student's working there, and also kind of get our mission out as well. And I have many ways that I go about doing it. Some call it sales. I just call it just sharing a mission.
Yeah.
Because if I had to ask you for it, it's probably not the right cool, right? So if I can get you in the building and you can see the impact that these lives have, it's transformational. So we get students from all over the community. We have our own school buses, so we bring the school to those areas that need it most, and then we bring them back.
So I've got a couple questions that are, I think, predominant thoughts. The first is about high school students.
Yeah.
They don't want to work. They just want to sit around and play video games. I mean, you're involved in connecting high schoolers to work. What is the attitude towards work in today's generation?
It's interesting because there's a lot of great thoughts, articles about generational work ethic. I heard a TikTok about, I don't hire any Gen Zs, Gen X, might have been Gen Z, one of the gens, because all they do is stay on their phones and they're not hard workers, right? And I'm finding, and even as I'm doing job solicitations, that I'm talking to many leaders, C-levels, and they having this issue with every generation. It's just the time that we're in. So I have a different approach. I think that if you find a human, youth, old, middle age, matters not, and you connect them to something that's bigger than them, and they can see a position in themselves that they may not know, you want to have to ask them to work. You just have to guide them to build. And I've seen many students that come in and say, I don't want to work, or, kids don't know what they want to do, right? Everybody want to swim with the dolphins if you at the zoo, or, I want to do this. But part of the beauty is finding out what you don't want to do. So that way you can focus on, I think I want to do this. And many of us don't find that out until student loan debt and many failed attempts later.
It's a great point. My dad owns a janitorial company, and working for him made me realize I want to do this.
Listen.
That not wanting to do something
Absolutely.
is really powerful, but you got to try it out.
Yeah. And I think that helps them to grow and develop. And then it gives them the soft skills that you need that's transferable in whatever you do. And learning how to use technology the right way opens up their minds to even dream beyond their circumstances.
So the second is, you mentioned Christ in the education.
Yeah.
And I think in our secular culture, in a lot of ways, we want to separate education and religion of any kind.
Yeah.
Why is it important to combine those two? And what would you say to somebody who, when they heard that, went, ugh, that sounds scary, icky, whatever that emotional trigger is, address that.
Yeah. So, education is one of the disciplines that no matter what your religious background is, it's always considered a profession because it deals with teaching. And teaching is one of the only professions that directly aligns to something inner being. We say things in education that you want to teach someone till you can see their light bulb goes off.
Right.
Well, another way of saying that is that you want to teach them where you can reach them. In fact, the etymology of education literally comes from a Latin word. It means to erect or to pull out of. So the greatest teachers are the ones that see what's in you, but they give you the tools to pull it out. So it's always a part of your inner being or your calling, your purpose. And I would suggest to others is that if you blend in, for me and my faith is Christ, if you blend in something that's bigger than what they're going through today, no matter where they come from, they'll find a way out. The issue is not connecting them to the curriculum. The issue is connecting them to life and how the curriculum can help aid them in life. And if you connect them to something that's internal, you'll find out that they'll have deeper rigor and they have more aptitude to succeed.
Greg, did you have something about that?
That's just beautiful. I just want to hear Isaac parallel that because there's some differences but similarities.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was just over here letting you wax on, eloquent. I love it.
Wax on.
Do that, man.
That's good. Teenage Mutant Ninja
Yeah,
Turtles.
no,
Okay.
Believe me, I'm 40. That was
Okay.
Come on.
Just for our audience that may have missed it. Just want to be culturally sensitive.
That's right.
No, I completely agree, and I think as I was listening to what Pastor Yeakey was saying over here, two things came to mind really. Being able to have purpose beyond yourself is so key, and that was a key part even in my story of coming up. And I think for kids today, being able to have that purpose and connecting faith to the education side of things, being able to say, okay, what's going on? Why does this matter in terms of your life, in terms of your family's life, in terms of your situation, that it's not just this one-dimensional thing of money. It's not just this one-dimensional thing of grades. Being able to give that bigger purpose, really starts to unlock folks. And then the other piece of just technology, right? It's not an escape. I think you view technology as an escape instead of as a tool. And when you can really key in on the fact that this is a tool that can unlock potential, that's when you start to see some, really magical things happening.
That idea of technology as escape is great. That's such a good point.
Can we have Isaac drill down a little bit to his background?
Yeah,
too,
that's
like
my
Fred
next
did,
question is, what's your purpose and how did you develop it? I mean, if you threw that out there, I want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, but, originally I was actually born in Nigeria and came to the States when I was about 10 years old. Lots happened in life during that, early age time period for myself. Both, unfortunately, mother and father passed away when I was 10 and 12 years old, respectively. And so there was a lot of growing up early on that happened, but again, in a way that wasn't necessarily, I would put it, for the right purposes, right? God was still in my life, even if I didn't know it, as I look back now, for sure, and, provided for my siblings and myself. But at the same time, it wasn't until I got to college, and right before I got to college, I met the Lord and changed my life, complete, 180 type of situation. And that's when I found that sort of real purpose of, okay, why is it I want to do what I want to do from going to even college in the first place standpoint. And I remember my first, my college essay was about turning algae into fuel. So, there's this whole mindset you can, or a school of thought, you can convert algae into jet fuel in particular. And throw a little tidbit in here. I saw recently that they're now doing algae cooking oil. So
Yeah,
I was the first buyer of that. So, high smoke points. So, but that was the thought process was, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to create this, amazing amount of wealth, and I'll be safe. That was my goal initially. And God, really redirected that and say, what's the, legacy you're going to leave, not for yourself, but for the kingdom.
Right.
And that's kind of what really, got me thinking more broadly about, different opportunities and just being open to what the Lord was doing in my life at that point, versus saying that it has to be something specific. And I think that sort of openness and that ability to say, okay, I'm going to take what opportunities come my way and learn again whether this is right for me or this is wrong for me, and be humble and honest with myself about that. And so I ended up going to a liberal arts college in Wisconsin, got a full ride to go over there. And that's where I found my passion of commercial real estate. I was an econ major, but I did an internship with a company based in Wisconsin, and that company was called Hendricks Commercial Properties. One thing led to another in my growth in that company, and about 8 years ago, I moved to Indianapolis with that company to head up some projects for them. So some projects that folks will know are the Ironworks and Bottleworks projects, and those kind of, as you might imagine, were really catapulting type projects, but at the same time, you lose a few hours of sleep with those types of projects too.
They're doing the Circle City Mall. They just bought the Circle Center Mall.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so they'll be working on that one for another couple of decades now.
Yeah.
But really that was a jumping off point for me again in terms of recognizing some of the gifts and talents that I had been given from that standpoint to be able to go off and start my own company. And I've been doing that now for about 4 years. It's called New City Development. We do mixed use style developments all across Indianapolis. And it's a combination of things like multifamily retail, office retail, even some industrial as well. And we have about $200 million worth of development going on right now, and about 119 mil in assets under management. Team of about 8 people on the squad, so small but mighty. And we actually own a hotel and restaurant right now. It's a small boutique style hotel down in Brown County, and that's increased our headcount from 8 to about 34. So
Nice.
we're moving and just trying to take things a step at a time.
So I think if you're in education, you're talking to people every day, and it's probably easy to keep people focused. But in commercial real estate, people who aren't in it, I would imagine, well, you're just dealing with numbers and construction, and it's not people focused. Like, how do you stay focused on people and keep that redemptive mindset towards your work?
Well, our motto is 2 things, because the built environment is more than just place, it's about space. It has to be, in my mind at least, about people, because were it not for it being about people, all these spaces or all these places would be empty, right? And so we oriented that way, and our motto is, enriching communities and elevating standards. And that stems from this redemptive standpoint, being a part of Praxis, really doing some of that deep work of saying, okay, how are we impacting the communities that we're going into, and if we're not enriching them? And that's going to look different in each community. It's going to look different on 16th in the Monon. It's going to look different, in Plainfield, Indiana. It's going to look different at 30th and Monon, right? All of these different neighborhoods have different needs, and being able to say, okay, what is it that this neighborhood needs? And doing the work of actually speaking with people in those communities, and again, kind of like Fred was talking about, extracting out what it is that they see as core to them, and they see as a need and an issue that they want to they need help addressing, and kind of tackling that and locking arms with them to create solutions that again can stand that test of time.
For both you guys, what are you currently working on to develop these places and spaces that's bringing beauty and truth and goodness into our community? Just one example from each of you would be fantastic for the audience.
Okay, currently, so I'm still at Cristo, but I've been part-time. This is my second year part-time. I've started a development company called 238 Properties, named after my favorite scripture in the Bible. Acts, the 2nd chapter, verse 38, the day of Pentecost, the world revival. And I hope you don't mind me telling this, but it came about when I was at this wonderful lake called Lake Lemon. And I tell you, if you haven't been to Lake Lemon, great things happen on a lake called Lemon. And I was on a good friend of mine's grill, gas grill. I'm a charcoal guy, but it was gas.
No judgment.
No judgment. It's all good, Don. So I was there, and I've been feeling the urge at Cristo Rey, because Cristo Rey is one of the only education institutions where it really blends you into the world, right? And not just in education, but I was feeling the urge of, like, I feel like there's more that I have to do. A lot of my students that I educate, sometimes they live in tough neighborhoods, right? And there's been many times where I have a Christmas break, a summer break, and I just lose where my kids are at because the housing is so volatile. I was like, man, there's more to do. And I was talking to Isaac. I said, Isaac, man, I think I'm feeling called to get into development. And I just knew Isaac was like, Fred, you don't know what you're doing. It's over your head. And I'll never forget, he said, you can do it, man. Absolutely. And I feel like that was the push that I made. So after I left a lake called Lemon, I went home, created an LLC, had no idea what I was doing, but I had this vision from God. And lo and behold, man, I created this unique affordable housing company where I'm utilizing tax credits to build affordable housing. So currently, I just broke ground on my first development on the south side of Indy. And I know, man, it's been a journey. And I'm working with Volunteers of America to build affordable apartments for women who are coming off of addiction and substance abuse. So 2 buildings, 36 multifamily units. And it's a mixed use. One building, I'm going to have wraparound services. I have a preschool. St. Mary's Child Care is going to be my preschool provider. And we're building a health clinic on site as well, so we can kind of talk about those ideas. So really pumped about that project, kind of working on it from build to end. But it's a project that I'm pretty pumped about.
Let's talk about affordable housing. Well, no, you finish your project. Yeah, please. I don't want to
hear
cut
it,
on it.
and then we'll get to that.
We're working on a master plan project in Plainfield, Indiana, and it's called Hop Station. And it is one where we are taking about 125 acres that was previously kind of just underutilized, farmland that was going to be turned into industrial development, and we're turning that into a kind of mixed-use hub that has everything, and I like to call it, really a multi-generational community that has everything from senior housing to traditional market rate multifamily housing, 30,000 square feet of retail, a public park that's going to service everyone in the community, trail, so about 2,000 feet worth of trail that is part of a 2-mile extension of an 8-mile long trail that sits right on our site. And in the future, there'll be other phases that include office and some more retail and potentially some childcare as well. And so, this is one where it's going to be kind of, a premier development that's really
It's huge, man.
changing the landscape of Plainfield in such a way that it hasn't been viewed before. Plainfield has kind of been viewed as, oh, the West Side is, ain't got nothing to say type of mindset. And
I'm
it
from
does.
Plainfield. Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's plain.
Yeah.
And there's a field.
Yeah, you got it. Coachman. All right, well,
Yeah.
fine. It's not a steakhouse, but it's a
Yeah.
great place to live. I'm
a great place to live. Yeah.
I love everything about Plainfield, and it's great to see that development there. What I'm hearing in these two projects is maybe an old way to think about development is like, let's just build an apartment complex and maximize as much profit as we can out of it. You're both putting a lot of thought into the experience of living in these locations for maybe two different populations, or childcare here, clinic here, right? Talk about that process of thinking through, this is what I think the people will need here, and this is just an extra layer of redemptive thinking applied towards an apartment complex or a housing development that isn't just maximize profit. Where does that come from? And am I right in what I'm hearing from you both?
I'm gonna let you go because you've been doing this way long than me. And
Yeah. No, happy to. I mean, the first thing I would say is just the world of commercial real estate in particular has become very much so about widget building. And so widget building in such a way that's titrated for efficiency and profit maximization. And, I think what kind of this redemptive approach calls us to is to take a step back and say, slow down. There's more to it than just pumping out, as efficient of a building, again, across, multiple categories. And that's kind of where, we're approaching it from, and saying that, okay, this might be what, the West Side, Plainfield, Avon, needs versus East Side of Indianapolis, two very different communities that, if we were widget builders, we'd just say, hey, can we fit, 250 units of apartments here? Yes or no? And if it's a yes, we do it. If it's a no, we skip town, right? And that's how a lot of folks approach things, and we're taking that time to say, well, actually, maybe it's not 250, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 50, but 50 with childcare here, or 50 with working with women in these sorts of hard situations, those types of things. Yeah,
I'll agree. And one thing that I see from commercial, this is all kind of developments. The affordable housing is such a significant need. In fact, the federal government is really making that the next 4 to 8 years, many affordable housing things that need to be either remodeled or tore down, but the growth keeps going because the spectrum is so big. Affordable housing is different for seniors versus it is for one-income parents versus those.
How is affordable housing defined? Like, pardon the interruption, but like, can you define that term? Because we do hear it a lot, but what does that mean in your terms?
Well, it across the country, everywhere is different, and every state has different laws, right? So Indiana's tough because some of the laws that are there are really favoring those who own, and rent can be ballooned versus it can be kind of stabilized. So one of the definitions that I found that's very easy is that affordable housing literally has to do with how much does the market say rent is and how much do you make. Is the inflation going with the rent, or is the inflation also taken into consideration that the rent and the hourly pay is not rising as quickly?
Yeah, 3.5 times earnings to apply for an apartment that's $1,500 a month is
It's crazy.
Not feasible for a lot of people. That they don't make $75,000.
Absolutely not. And when you look at those who may live on government assistance can't even keep up with that. So you have this balloon, and it continues to grow. And depending on where you at in the region, state, or country, it can look very differently. In fact, many people don't know, but rural America is struggling significantly with affordable housing. We just think about the big cities, but there's a lot of rural, small communities where there's no place to live.
Yeah.
So I think, as Isaac said it greatly, if we want to do affordable housing and development, we have to look inversely. We have to do a community first in mind. I think oftentimes we can think of profit, which you have to have profit to have business, but you also have to have things that can be profitable for the community in which these things are meant to serve. And I look at it from the standpoint of just like the ground that we have. I mean, the development is so much visionary. You have to have faith, you have to have vision, you have to be able to tell other people to buy in. But then you deal with something that God doesn't make anymore in land.
Yeah.
And when you deal with that land, all land has history. And you have to do these tests on the land called like boil soils, where you go and dig into the land and you like Carfax, there's like a land fax. You get everything that once was on that land, good, bad, or indifferent. And then you see the history of the land. And to me, you want to honor that, because as you honor that land, so much of that can be blessed, sanctified, and can really help to produce the seeds that you want to plant that they can grow out of.
Don?
A question I have is, both of you have really jumped out. You left Hendricks and you had, multiple positions. You had Providence and things. How do you, to the listeners, how do you develop courage? What has been helpful to develop courage? And then also, how do you assess risk and perhaps mitigate your risk?
That's a great question. I think where I'll probably start is in something that I think might be a little countercultural in the mindset of, I think confidence is built in community.
That's good.
And sometimes the whole idea, there's so many things out there right now in terms of, Forbes, self-made this, self-made that. It's like, no, none of us are self-made. And so I think you build that confidence that, yes, there's a lot of, reflection and self and all of that. It's totally important. But, when I went out, and Fred even just mentioned it in his story of talking to, another fine gentleman in his
Very handsome, very smart,
all those things.
Does push-ups.
successful, biceps for
I'm
days,
telling
right?
you, you see it.
I set myself up for that.
To kind of tie that together, this is a question that I have that I think is just really instructive, and I'd love to hear from each of you. That moment of you saying, I'm thinking of going part-time. I've got an idea. I don't know if I can do it.
Oh.
And you make a phone call. And I want to hear your side of like the psychology of that. And then Isaac, what makes you believe in Fred just to say, do it? There's no doubt about it. Do it.
Man, oh, sheesh. Sit up here. It's like, Don's question, your question is weird. It's weird. Like, what caused me to step out the boat? It was literally a connection as I prayed and meditated with God. Everything in me said, don't do it. You're comfortable, you're fine. But I felt the urge. And when I really felt like this is where the Lord was leading me, and I began to write things down, my mind went back to when Peter left the boat, man. It's like he got out of the boat in the middle of a storm. I'm like, not only did he walk on water, but the wind was blowing, thunderstorm. Then they see this figure walking on water, lightning coming. And when that happened, I was like, there's never a good time to do it.
Yeah.
Just got to do it. And I said, why not? I'll talk to my wife. And thankfully, she believed enough in me and really that she said, if this is God telling you to do it, do it. And I tell you, when I left the boat, I didn't know that God already had a plan for me, man. I left the boat and I began to talk to a couple of board members at the school, and they was like, you doing what? I was like, yeah. I said, I'm not leaving. I know what I'm doing next. They said, can you have someone to talk to? And I talked to community, and one of the community guys happened to run a bank. It was like the third largest in the country, and he had me talk to somebody who was a part of the school mission, and he said, hey, IHCDA has a unique set-aside that it just opened up for black developers who have no experience and who want to solve a big need. I heard that you are a developer. At the time, all I developed was peach cobblers and a mission. And I sat there and said, God said, say you are. I said, you know what? If God can tell Noah to build a boat, he can tell me. And I said, yes. And I didn't know that this was waiting for me. And I was selected out of the state of Indiana with a 9% tax credit deal to build something that God showed me. And I felt like that was the confidence that I needed just to say yes. Now, not all of them are that way, but that was enough that I needed. But like, okay, I'm not crazy.
It's beautiful that all you had to do was ask, and it was already there.
That's it.
So when you ask Isaac,
Yep.
and you hear his plan, and your response is, "What are you waiting on?" Where does that come from? Tell us take us back to that conversation of what you were thinking in that moment and how to encourage your friend.
Yeah, I think again, I've been in development for quite a bit, and I know how hard it is, right? So it's not to discount that reality, but the idea that or the person that I know Fred to be in terms of taking risks, in terms of being resilient, in terms of working hard. Those are all the key character ingredients you need to be successful in this business, right? And having that sort of resiliency, because there'll be plenty of days where you're like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I'm sure it's like that in many other industries, but it's acutely so in commercial real estate development. And I think that I saw all of that in him, and we had the conversation about how it would be challenging too. So it wasn't one dimensional. That, it's just going to be this walk in the park. It was, here are some of the challenges you're going to see, but, here's why it's still rewarding, and here's why, you should go after this, and the legacy you'll be able to build from that.
You can join us live and listen in on the conversation and ask a question. Just join us in the heartbeat.chat link in the show notes, and you can catch it live on Zoom and ask questions. And you can also, if you're joining us live, as half a dozen folks are right now, then you can also catch this later on YouTube and on podcasts, as our listeners are. Greg, why don't you take us home?
So
Let's start asking some of those
one
final
more
questions.
theme. I met Fred Yeakey decades ago.
Oh.
He didn't bring this up,
Yeah.
but we were starting the Oaks Academy.
You
And
both
it's a
were in
long
middle school
story.
together?
Yeah, middle school together. I was younger. Fred was my mentor. But Fred was working at the Babe store and overseeing what St. Vincent's was doing at 23rd and Park.
Yeah.
And I just thought,
True story.
here's a young man. I didn't know Fred from anybody, but would just walk in the hall, just ran into him, very, effervescent kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's he doing down here? In the hood, sacrificing for that, doing a great work there. And that's another podcast here about his progression as he's moved through that. But it's all about sacrifice. This young man right here, he was our developer with Polk Stables, with New City. And Isaac sacrificed to do that. And that word sacrifice is a common denominator that I will always thank these two brothers for, because that is the seed of the harvest. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it doesn't bring forth much fruit. And that's the kind of love that it takes to make a difference in my life. And these two brothers have made a difference in my life, in Don's life, and in the life of their family in this city. So I just wanted to make sure that theme came out in this conversation, because we have that connection, and it's indelibly imprinted on my life.
I think for either of you, when you think sacrificially, there's that initial instinct of, if I give this up, I'm losing this. Have you found that to be true in your careers? Doesn't sound like it based on what Greg just said.
Man, not for me. I feel like every opportunity that I've been afforded to gain came because I was willing to give opportunity away. And it was just like answering the call, man. It's I don't think I'll be where I'm at now without sacrificing my will for Christ, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, there's a way that I thought that I was going to do it, and man, I'm going to do it. You get excited. I'm going to get this money. But it's like, at the end of the day, I was like, I get a weird feeling. I can't put my finger on it. I'm going to turn down this really big opportunity just to stay where I'm at. And that thought has always served me well. And I enjoy it, man. It's almost like I enjoy coming up from a place where I don't owe anyone. I just owe God a thank you.
Isaac. Isaac?
Yeah. I think about sacrifice in the fullest sense. I mean, it is about giving up something, but I think about it from the mindset that, what is it to gain the world but to lose your soul, right? And I approach it with that mindset because I see a lot of opportunity that would just be for benefit, right? Versus no, this is something that goes beyond me. And I don't know that I necessarily say, oh, I'll see the immediate benefit tomorrow or today, but I think that's one of those principles that, just we've been taught via scripture that, you will see, benefit from, in terms of, again, the community that you're building, right? And it's more about, what are you doing for the kingdom than necessarily just for yourself. So that's kind of how I view it, not with the mindset that, oh, this is gonna, bring this, benefit down the line. It's just, this is what I'm supposed to do.
I'm going to direct this to Isaac before we go to Don's final comment or question. He doesn't have one, so this will be our final question or comment. Bob, here in the audience on Zoom, asks, thanks so much, gentlemen. How much of a finance background is needed for commercial real estate development? What do you think?
So I come from a finance background, so I would say it's quite important. But at the same time, I would say that, again, this goes back to the whole idea of community. It goes back even within an organization, in a different way of saying a delegation, right? But you have to have a basic understanding of the numbers, at minimum. No understanding, you're going to struggle. But a basic understanding is enough. A stronger understanding, I just had an intern, finishing up with us. He just got the rotational program at Thompson Thrift, so I feel proud about that. But, I imprinted on him the fact that, the foundation you want to have is, at minimum, the financial analysis. And from there, you can do quite a bit. You can do a lot of good damage in that regard. So I emphasize that it's not, the end-all, be-all, but it's a great foundation.
All right, well, gentlemen, is there anything... Oh, yeah, man, all kinds of questions just popped up. Dalton writes, with the Great Commission in mind, how do you all structure your conversations with other in the world of work who might not be Christian?
I think I try to lead by example in a life, embody what I truly believe is a calling. I had a pastor once told me when I was a young man, he said, Fred, if you have to use words to tell people you're a Christian, you're probably not living it right. They should tell by your walk. And I try to live in that way where I can just be benevolent, because that's just kind of who I am. And that's always attracted people who were curious, and also attracted people who want to give back because of that. So that's kind of how I share my mission.
Same thing. I think it's about, action, faith without action is dead. And, I do still think, the proclamation is an important aspect of it. But I think the more important aspect is, what are your actions? And, just kind of trying to lean into that day in and day out and manifest it in different ways, whether, again, it's in the work product or it's in the relationships, and also in the, presence of mind that, as I'm learning day in and day out, and even more so in this season, of what you say no to being the most powerful thing than more so what you say yes to.
That's good.
So we have a great question from Dylan, which will be our last here. How do you approach affordable housing and addressing the community members, plan commissions, and councils that present objectives for that housing?
That is a loaded question. So I'm working on my next deal in Kokomo, and there's a significant need. And I think finding the need for affordable housing is easy. I think now unpacking how you can make that happen is the art, because the need is there. Then you have to think about the land. You have to think about who are the community partners. Then you also have to understand what are the politics, local politics, because this deal that I learned that any great deal can be held up because of one relationship, such as you can't get your permits. And that can derail a project for years and cause money. And that permitting process is not only about relationships, but it's about knowing who is there and making sure everyone wants to build in the need of the why. So I don't know if there's just one answer because every place is different, but there is a lot of on-ground relationships and things you have to have access to include people. I mean, just words can't express. Just to get this through, it was a work of art from everyone, and you have to have everyone going in the same direction.
Now, Isaac, I know nobody in Plainfield gave you any problems, and they were all great to work with. But other places, how do you handle bringing everybody in so the community buys in to the project, and maybe those difficult people?
We actually had no remonstrators, actually,
All right.
surprisingly enough. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, I've had challenges in that regard, but a big part of it is that art of, again, relationship building on the front end versus this is what we're doing and we're going to just jam it down your throats, right? I think that's the sort of approach that a lot of folks take and miss, even with affordable housing. It's like, hey, there's this need. You guys just need to, agree with this need, and we don't care what you say, we're going to do this, right? That causes people to automatically, shell up and close off to whatever initiative or inspiration you might be operating from. And so I think that that's one of the key things of just how do you bring people along for the ride? You're not always going to bring, folks, everyone, along for the ride, but you'll bring a lot more people with you than not. But I've had some good battles too, where at the end of the battle, said person came up to me and said, I'll get you on the next one.
Okay.
So some people just look at it as sport,
Yeah.
regardless of what your mission might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, that's silly. But
it is,
all right. Well,
because it hurts the community.
yeah. Any final thoughts, Don or Greg? Okay.
Great.
It's been so great to talk to you both. I mean, is there anything you want to plug? Any websites, not just personally, but projects that you're really passionate about that you'd love to give some exposure to?
Well, this deal that I'm doing now locally in Indianapolis is going to be one of the first of its kind in Indiana. And we're looking to replicate this. Addiction is going through the roof, and I think affordable housing that has places that are also connected to ministries can be important. So just be on the lookout. We're going to have an open house hopefully here within the next year and a half once we are done. So that's just something I'm really pumped about because this really is a community project.
Podcast? Tell us about
Also,
your podcast.
Yeah, sure. So there's a podcast called the Barbershop Male Mentoring Initiative. For those who don't know, I'm the educator that cuts hair. So in the basement of Providence, Cristo, there's an actual barbershop where I mentor and talk. And we just launched season 1 of our podcast where we talk about all things mentoring by talking about ordinary individuals who have done extraordinary things, and really just want to capture a oral story of how people became how they became and what's their why. So it's really been great because we're bringing youth in there, and hopefully we can capture enough of good so we can have that be the most contagious thing beyond COVID and beyond.
And the corporate partnerships.
And corporate
I
partnerships.
was going to plug. I was like, corporate partnerships.
Corporate partnerships. If you are wanting to be a part of a unique experience to get individuals 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade to be a part of your organization just through mentoring and giving them an opportunity to show their worth and value and also grow your bottom line eventually, I would love to have a conversation with you. In about 3 weeks, we're going to have our annual draft day where all of our corporate partners come to our school and they launch where the students are going to be working. It's a transformational experience. And I'm happy to say that our largest corporate partner is no longer Eli Lilly. They've always been a stable. Indiana University Health has now taken 38 students to be jobs throughout
That's
there.
awesome.
And I want to give a special thanks to Dennis Murphy for having the vision. And he also is a barber who comes and hang out with me in the barbershop for the students. So he's one of the leaders that really care enough about coming down and just hanging with the trenches. So excited about Eli Lilly jumping up to 35 jobs, and we working hopefully with One America. They're going to kind of grow their partnership too. So
That's great. Anything?
Be on the lookout for Hop Station coming live in 2025.
Let's go. Let's go.
And we're going to be, jam-packing it with, local artists' work as well. And one that I'm particularly excited about. No. I mean, of course. I mean, what am I saying?
White
yes, but no, I need to be careful. Dig myself in a grave one way or the other. But my wife is an artist. She's a very talented artist at that too. But there's a former Hoosier that has been doing some world-renowned stuff, and connected with him over actually All-Star break. And he's going to be bringing some of his talents to the project and back to the Hoosier, state. So really excited to kind of showcase some of that with the project.
All right. Well, Fred Yeakey, Isaac Bamgbose. All right. Bamgbose.
Said it right the first
Isaac
time.
Bamgbose.
There you go.
That's why I write it down. I have notes because I'm scared of saying anybody's name. I mean, I'm always mispronouncing, so I apologize. But
Very good.
thanks so much for joining us. This has been such a great conversation. We've really gotten a great experience with getting to know you both and hearing your relationship.
Thank you for the
Thank
opportunity.
you. Great to be out here.
And thank you for joining us here on Big Hearted Indie. Be sure to go to citizen7indie.com, learn more about the organization, join the email list, and come to one of the events that are happening soon. And make sure you go back and listen to the catalog of this podcast. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to experience a lot of great people who are doing great things in the community. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next month.